Hello again from the Outside Edge podcast. Australia's women have cruised to their sixth Women's T20 World Cup title.
Shock.
England are continuing their reimagination of Test cricket under Bazball, and Australia's men are struggling in India. We've got a little chat with former IPL auctioneer Richard Madley a little bit later on, plus a very special interview at the top of the show.
But before you hear from our absolute dross, let's have a listen to our interview from our favourite host and probably the greatest Test cricketer England's ever seen, Sir Alastair Cook.
Take it away. It's quite possibly a turning point in the Outside Edge podcast history. We've stumbled upon the guest to top all guests just 12 episodes in. I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming one of England's most technically gifted, highly revered and most celebrated farmers. How are the cows, Cookie?
They're okay, thank you. They're all tucked up in bed. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I should add when I'm doing this.
Now, in all seriousness, a few numbers to smooth the cracks, re-stroke the ego. Leading run scoring tests, I'm sure you know, 12,472 runs. 66 of those coming by way of maximums. You're the fifth highest run scorer of all time and have a test bowling average superior to Anderson, Broad, Botham, Willis, Truman and Swan. With 1 wicket at 7. As much as I'd love to converse with you and chew your ear off about my personal club third 11 stats on play cricket, Trent, my Australian co-presenter, and I have drafted up a few silly questions to fire at you while we have your attention. Off the bat, who would have the better batting average if they played 100 test matches but batting right-handed, you or Jimmy Anderson?
Good question. I'm going to have to go Jimmy because he plays golf right-handed, and I know that he has had nets right-handed because the way he hits a golf ball right-handed doesn't quite understand why he bats left-handed, if that makes sense. So we technically think he should be a right-handed batter.
Moving on to Bazball, which I'm sure you're fed up of hearing about. You text Broady fairly regularly, I'm led to believe. What's worse, Stuart Broad's performance at Nighthawk or having to sit through Stuart Broad's proposition of him talking about the role?
Well, no, I like sitting through Nighthawk because I know it's going to, over the next... It was only ever going to be more than 20 minutes at night, so it is going to be entertaining, and it is going to be, as we found out the first time we've seen it, it was chaos. I was a little bit disappointed in the morning because I actually thought he might have got a score because he does like the attention, and there was a lot of Nighthawk attention that evening. The fact that it was trending on Twitter and he released statement after statement.
Just hammering it home.
It was a little bit of an anticlimax. He only lasted a few balls in the morning.
Highlight of your career, obviously, 14-hour 263 run knock from 528 rocks in Abu Dhabi. Aside from the obvious question of who in God's name wants to play cricket for that long, it begs the question, how would Sir Alastair Cook fit into the Bazball setup?
Well, I don't think I would. I mean, unless I was a coach or the water boy, I'm not sure that would go down too well. I'm not sure even any of England's innings have lasted as 500 balls, let alone one player taking up all that time.
Would the England central contract be enough to convince you to play some Joe Root reverse paddles? A few more zeros.
Well, I've always said I've got them in the locker and I've chosen never to use them. So
it's a conscious thing. Yeah?
It says, purely deliberate. I only ever played 3 shots, so it's a good job that will never ever get proven because I will never play Bazball, but I can keep saying it.
We had Mason Crane on the podcast last week as his teammate during the 17-18 Ashes series. Which no-ball wicket was worse? His bowling to Khawaja on a flat SCG wicket when it was 40 degrees, or Tom Curran having David Warne, England's favourite bloke, caught for 99 on Boxing Day?
Oh, yeah, it's going to have to be the 99. More for the fact that then we had to then endure a David Warner celebration a ball later when he did get his 100, and it was even more
something the wings
over the top than normal. So yeah, that one.
What would you rather, watch Peter Siddle's hat-trick on repeat or listen to KP talk you through his 5 greatest Test innings?
I'm going to have to watch Peter Siddle's hat-trick, purely for the fact that it was the start of I can watch it thinking, well, that was the lowest point of that tour, and the fact that I got this about I'm not sure how many times Sid's got me out before then, but that was the start of the time where Sid's has pretty much got me out every time on it. So when he did sign for Essex, I thought that was particularly enjoyable because he'll only have to be able to get me out in the nets. But now he's playing for Somerset and he kept promising only one more year. He's playing again this year, so our battle. It's not really a battle when one person wins it so clearly and obvious. So I'm gonna have to watch that because actually it's slightly quicker than some of KP's great innings, which to be fair to him were extraordinary.
If you bowled every single Test you played, how many wickets would you get?
Well, I'm going to let the viewers or the listeners, decide. Is that I got a wicket and I averaged 7 in Test cricket.
Do the math.
And I bowled off spin in another game, and I did impressions, and the ball was apparently the wicket was so flat. No, I'm get a wicket on, and it was an 80 odd over ball, and I still got a wicket. So imagine if I took it seriously and I bowled. Do you have to think how many wickets I'd have got?
Last question from Trent, can't be here today. He asks, why is my father's love conditional and why can't I play off my pads?
Are you left-handed?
He's right-handed.
Right-handed. Why can't he play with his pads? I know the answer to a left-hander can't play with his pads, but a right-hander, I reckon I'd say is you're backing away too much to open up the offside. You don't have the confidence to open up your front leg and hit it.
Nothing.
Or actually just rubbish.
Nothing on the dad stuff.
No.
Thanks, Cookie.
All right.
Bye.
Oh my God. What a man. Well, I've got to say, Paddy, he's royally fucked me over there. Not only has he called me a shit cricketer, he hasn't helped me work out what the fuck's going on with my front pad and why I can't play around it. And secondly, he's not helping me out with my dad stuff. That's all I want to know. I'm yearning to fucking hear this stuff about my dad, especially from England's greatest Test cricketer. I need help.
You preface the question why is my father's love conditional, and then just as a little don't forget about me not being able to play off my pads. I think the crux of the question was the dad stuff, but good to chat to Cookie. Hey, pretty good scout for the pod.
Very good scout. I've got one question for you. How's the jawline on it? It's striking on air, but what's it like in person?
Honestly, you could chop onions with that. No, what's the phrase? What's the phrase?
You can cut glass. You can cut glass.
Yeah, honestly, that the bone structure is phenomenal. He's a pretty dapper fella. Is Sir Alastair. Bone structures. I felt pretty inferior, not only as a cricketer, obviously, but as a bloke and as a physical specimen. I'm not the tallest as well, and Cookie's got some limbs on him. So, but yeah, pleasure to sit down and be at sort of level heights for a few minutes.
Right, I've got a question for you. If you did know Cookie as a bloke or what he's done within cricket at all, you just met him in person, and first of all, you see his face, you see the jawline, you see the rig, how thick it is, and then you hear about his Test career and how good he is at cricket. What's more impressive?
Go hand in hand a bit, don't they? They sort of they sort of complement one another. He's
that's true.
Yeah, he's sort of. He's one of those people where you'd probably be conversing with, there's decent shapes on this lad. And then you hear about his numbers, which is, I think that's the sort of cherry on top in that scenario. As we know, all blokes should be defined by numbers. It's really good for the sort of raising of men's mental health awareness. I'm defined by my play cricket, and that's why I'm miserable. But yeah, it's sort of at that point in the discourse, in the conversation, where I go, you are far too superior a chap to be speaking to me. And at that point, I'd probably slink away and go home and cry.
Should we peek under the hood for listeners how we got that chat in the first place?
Yeah, I've been sort of doing actual journalistic gears, Treno.
Boring.
Yeah, I know. Who'd have thunk it? This podcast is.
It doesn't create any revenue.
Yeah, no,
but if you do want to help out, please do.
Exactly. No. So I was involved in the production for the England New Zealand series with BT. It was pretty surreal and good to do that. And then been writing a bit for Wisden as well. Got some writing in
published.
Wisden Cricket Monthly, which you can get now if you want to hear any of my slightly more professional cricketing drivel. But yeah, it's been a pretty good month, and good to get back on the podcasting wagon, so to speak. What I want to kick things off with, Trent, is how safe are those ladies making you feel? Australia, 19-run win over South Africa in Cape Town, yet another Women's T20 World Cup title. How about Beth Mooney?
Unbelievable.
What a win for the gals.
You just, every single time they play cricket, not only do you see the highlights, you watch it live and you go, oh, this feels so safe. But you look at the 11 they bring out every single week. When they bring someone else in, they're just prestigious. Like you've got your Moonies, you got your Alyssa Healy, you got your Lise Perrys, blah, blah, Talia McGrath. And then you got this absolute jet wonder kid in Ash Gardner, who's just the future of T20 cricket in women's game. And you go, we've just got locked in for the next 5 World Cups. I know it already in my soul. Everyone else is playing for second. We come up here. I was actually talking to a coach I was working with today who, surprising enough again, that I'm not earning enough money from this podcast. But as I was coaching today, he's a Safa. And I was like, what's the reaction back home to everyone, like the World Cup final? And he's like, well, first of all, like one of our famous cricketers, I forget the name, he tweeted before the match, goes, let's just congratulate our women's team for making the finals, because that's a good enough achievement. We're just playing for second in this tournament, and that says enough. Everyone's playing for second. They know it. We know it.
It's pretty valuable insight. The semi-finals were quite something. Pretty gutting for us Poms, I should say. To lose out to the hosts in a pretty riveting game of T20 cricket.
I thought they were going to give them a good shake. I thought England would give Australia a good shake. Surprisingly enough, India did. I thought England was the second best team of the tournament, and then obviously went out in the semi-final. But I thought they were probably best suited to give us a shake in the final.
Well, and they did give you a pretty good go of it. A few misfields, and you could have, like, you were in a bit of trouble, but managed to sort of
a lot of Barney rubble.
Yeah, and that is, catches win matches, Treno. You know that much. But yeah, England, South Africa in the semis. I just want to give a massive shout out to Tasmin Brits for four grabs in the. I think it was the first 4 of England's wickets in their chase, including the second one, which was. I think it was Dunkley, where she just like leaps over from mid wicket and sort of catches it scrambling at her toes. Unbelievable grab. One of the best catches I've seen in a World Cup finals. Ultimately, it wasn't to be as, it's in classic English fashion. We've bottled it in a final, but in the cricket, we've been all right at that lately. So. Over to the men now to pick up the mantle and go for it again in the ODI World Cup in a few months' time in India. Want to just fire over to the Aussie men. Fortunes aren't as...
Do we have to?
Yeah, mate. The sort of, what's the word? Appeal of this podcast is the English-Australian dynamic that we display. So I'm going to have to drag your balls through a field of sharded glass and ask you about those baggy greens.
You put that perfectly there. What we were seriously expecting from this tour anyway, like I know everyone's just slating us in the media right now, but we've come here 7 years after our last test tour where we got absolutely spanked. We know that India are the best team ever in their own conditions. Our squad selection was baffling. Our first test selection was baffling. And now we're just reaping the rewards of systemic problems that we would never change because test cricket isn't financially viable anymore. So that's an educated way of putting it. And uneducated way is that Australia's shit. Bring on the Ashes 5-0.
What we were talking just before we recorded about how Australia approached the Ashes. Who do you back? Davey Warne looks like not only his feet are going, but his eyes are going. I think
ominous signs.
Yeah, it's like in the country that he averages so poorly in tests, and then you've got another drama up the top of the order. Do you bring in Marcus Harris to open up with Uzi, or do you bite the bullet and say, "Here's your goodbye present, Davey. Go get skittled by Broad for a few weeks."
He's put it to the media he wants to play on until 2024, so I'm guessing he's going to start. Does he deserve a start? Yes, history says he's played hundreds of tests, blah, blah, blah. But is he good enough at the moment to produce what we need as a test opener in the Ashes? Because realistically, we got the best engine room Australia's had for a long time in Marnus, Smith, and Head. Smithy's not in the best form, but like Marnus and Head are in really good form. So a test opener for Australia, all they need to do is average 30. Just get the shot off the ball, get to 20, 25 overs in before we get the engine room really humming along. That's what I think an opener, along with Khawaja, can do to give ourselves the best chance to win. I just don't think I don't think Warne can do that for us at the moment.
Yeah, it's a peculiar one because all great test teams have had a really solid player at the top of the order. And that engine room is there and will, allow the total to kick on later in the innings. But this Australian one is like, you have such a powerful top middle order in that sort of 3 to 5 range now with Smith, Labuschagne and Travis Head, who's obviously number 4 bat in the world and, playing with his member. But you do just think like, can we get a player to just see off the Duke's ball where it sort of gets its shine back a bit after 15 overs when the lacquer's gone and it's all a bit, can they just hold down the fort and then Smithy comes in and bludgeons a couple daddy tons.
It does sound silly, doesn't it? Like we're playing Test cricket at the highest form, and like, who can take the shot off the ball? Like we're playing under 10s. I will say though, Marcus Harris last year, the last couple of years, has averaged 58 opening batting in county championship. It's like the performance is on paper, but can he do it when it counts in the big dog tournament? But I'm going to preface this. I'm going to ask you now because we talked about the Australian Open batters. Who would be your frontline quicks starting the Ashes first test? Or no, sorry, your best 11, because I know they'll chop and change every 20 tests, but who's your best 11? Is it Archer, Robinson, Anderson?
I think Anderson and Robinson are your shoe-ins at this stage.
Yeah, for sure.
The year they've had, Anderson is a freak. Like, the way
he's getting better. How the fuck is that bloke getting better?
I saw a graphic of like his numbers and his average in periods of his 3-4 year periods of his career. And 34 to 39 was his best. The best is how he's averaged at like 21 in tests, and now he's averaging less than that. Obviously he's played in a couple slightly peculiar test series against Pakistan and New Zealand, as is ongoing, as we should say. But he's the best England have ever had, and maybe the best seamer of all time. I obviously you're gonna go for Glenn McGrath as your rebuttal. I think McGrath was probably superior on a wicket taking front, but mate, does he have as nice an action as our Jimbo? I don't know. I think Anderson and Robinson's your shoe-ins. You want to see Broady just because of how good he is in England against Australia. I don't think it needs Broady to get rid of Warner at this point. I don't think if you bring out Broad, I don't think Warner's going to think, fuck, I can cash in against Mark Wood and Joffrey Archer. So I don't know. I think
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think you have options if you're England. I think Anderson and Robinson, I should say, are your frontliners, and then you've got options to rotate around that. They've been wrapping Mark Wood in cotton wool for the last year, probably because they want him to be fit for that. And we've seen in this second test against New Zealand that when the ball dies a little bit, the pitch flattens out, they might not have that express pace wicket machine that they sort of need. So whether they are wary of that going into, I think particularly at the Oval, they'll want to be picking a bowler like that on a particularly flat track where batsmen can score runs aplenty. But yeah, I think your two dramas, if you're England at the moment, which seems silly given how they're playing, is Crawley at the top of the order and maybe Leachy, but I think they'll still go with Leachy because Rayan's probably a little bit too fetal at the moment to be that frontline spinner.
Who's dropping out of the team for YJB? Johnny Bairstow?
He's got to come back, doesn't he? He's got to be in that the year he had, and he personifies Bazball, which has been off discussed lately. I've said Crawley. I've screamed it from the rooftops. The only problem is, I doubt Bairstow will want to open given the size of his front pad and the size of the gate between.
It's a fucking huge gate.
Yeah, you could get a sort of bust through it. I don't know.
Roy-esque.
Yeah, exactly, mate. But yeah, I don't know. I think I want to see them get rid of Crawley, and then because I think if Bairstow can take the gloves at this stage, Folks will be the one to go, which is such a shame because he hasn't really put a foot wrong, and he's a gun with the mitts.
And he looks so good, mate. He's such a beautiful human being.
So fit, honestly. We talk a lot, and have done on this episode as well alone about good-looking blokes, and having someone like that with your mitts on, no brainer.
That's another safety thing. Like the thing that I adored about Tim Payne, his mediocre batting aside, was first of all how neat he looked as a keeper. His tucked in shirt was perfect every single time. Gloves, everything matched. His hair was always on point, and his cap was always ever so slightly just perfectly in between both sides of the ears. Yeah. That's a big thing I need out of my keeper.
And I'm sure Ben Folkes is a little bit tidier in the WhatsApp DMs as well. So I think that's your sort of chalk and cheese. But yeah, Folkes' class. I mean, can we talk about Ollie Pope as well under the lid? You know he'll be next England captain, because who wants to field under the lid for 80 overs and then be that keen while they're doing it?
Yeah, it's a number 3 thing now. You know, Marnus does it full time because he's a lunatic. Is that a number 3 thing now?
Do you reckon there's something in the water? Do you reckon there's something going on there? Something fishy?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We all know we can't be like a normal human being and be good at cricket. If you've met number 3, you're going to be more fucking lunatic.
Are you saying we're normal human beings then?
Yeah, because we're both shit. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a few headaches, but I mean, if we talk about Harry Brooks' numbers, I can't believe we've gone this long in the episode without discussing it. He's averaging just shy of 80.
It's so simplistic too. His technique is so suited to modern day cricket. I just love it.
Yeah, he is KP reincarnate. The way he bats so deep in his crease, that toe of his bat pointing to the sky, plays so straight, but then when you give him a short one, he will baseball shot you down the ground. He sees it like a watermelon. Like, honestly, it's like playing Fruit Ninja out there.
Kills width too.
Kills width. Don't offer in anything there. And it would be unfair to say he's in a purple patch. He's in like a deep purple patch. And will the Aussies be the one to burst that bubble? I think going into the Ashes,
Scott Bowen, come on, baby,
get the bush horse amongst it. But yeah, no, I don't know. I think it's a very, very good time, we were just saying before we recorded, to be an English cricket fan, because the way the English cricket team plays cricket is a perfect exponent of like their attitude, and that means it's carefree. If you play cricket carefree, then the fans are subconsciously skewing their mindsets in a much more laid back way, enjoying the cricket, and it's a complete stark contrast. It's completely Mitchell contrast to that's shocking. Apologies, mate. To the Aussies who will jump, who will jump on their stars. At the first. Whenever fits, and when results aren't going their way. So I think right now it's pretty giddying time, as I wrote on outsideedgecricket.com. to be an England fan, and the Aussies will rightly, not to tell you how you're feeling, pal, but you'll probably be a little bit worried here.
I'm just going to say what Alan Borden or the old boys have said since day one of Bazball. I just want to see you boys do it against us. Colonials against the convicts. I want to see you do it against us.
Yeah, mate.
Yeah,
honestly,
that's wet chat. It's going to happen. Like, we all know it's going to happen. We're going to win one test, maybe. Like, it's going to be absolute demolishing.
Yeah,
especially like the mentality of the boys right now would be an all-time low.
Yeah, I'd be interested. That's what we've got to try and do, is get one of the Aussie lads on the pod if we can somehow get them and just get an insight into the dressing room. Do you reckon they've got Brookie on the telly, like as he's hitting this like cobbled together New Zealand pace attack, just like making them want to quit cricket? Like, honestly, you'd be
Todd Henry's coming up, I reckon.
Yeah. Dougie Bollinger's out of retirement. Yeah, get him back.
Oh boy.
Anyway, well, I really enjoyed that natter with you, Treno. Okay, well, that's enough of us pretending we know anything about cricket, Treno. We've left it a little bit later this week. Village moment of the week is an absolute perler. Talk us through it.
This is probably one of the best ones we've had so far. So it's going on in the deep suburbia of the Australian outback. The caption said D grade cricket. I think that's a bit of a stretch. It's probably fucking Z grade if there is a thing. So this bloke's striking, and it's the last wicket of a grand final from what I've conquered from the clip. It's a bloke who is lidless, untucked shirt, and is really aggressively banging the bat on the ground before the bowler comes in. The bowler runs in, lets go the ball, and I have to say, it's a loopy leggy. The ball goes out of frame. How the hell
it's got
you get
snow
the ball
on
that high in the air and have control of it?
It's because they don't have nets out there, mate. There's no fear of it going on top. Got snow on it.
But especially in C grade, mate, no one practices. And then he's going for a slug sweep. Keeper, actually surprisingly quick hands, takes the bowers off. He blows up to an absolute fit of rage, starts banging the bat on the ground, and on his third bang, breaks the bat in half. Now, the best thing is, other than like half his bat flying off to square leg, is that he picks him up, both hands, and as he's walking off the ground, he's like shadow batting what shot he should have played instead, like a nice cover drive to like push a single long off with both bats and both hands at the same time, just going 1, 2, yeah.
The raucous cacophony, like the chaos of the clip. Like if you can see it, if we're on YouTube, you'll see it like superimposed. But go over to the TikTok and the Instagram to see it. But like chaos, it's like a fever dream. It leaves me with really like sweaty palms, hearing all of these like car horns. You know, they're all in their cars, hammering stubbies, like. Honestly, whistles, like it's I can't remember. It's like it's sort of
India-esque.
It's
like
India.
The cacophony of sound just like closing you in.
Yeah, it's like watching a test match in India. It's like a performance of Stomp. It's like some sort of I couldn't quite get around it. And then umpire in his sort of khaki cargos and Lonsdale.
He's definitely got a tinny shoved in like one of like pockets of his cargo shorts. Yeah.
And
little hot forex.
It's a pretty tough watch. Bloke, no lids, not even caps. White trousers underneath, I think, with the colours. Honestly, it's such a good clip. But like cricket, sort of grade cricket, club cricket, dusty cricket rage is injected into my veins, Treno. Genuinely, that is one of the best clips I've ever seen, and you can go get around it on the socials. Anyway, without further ado, we've rambled for quite some time. This is the third time of recording because I said I've said Richard Hadley subconsciously for the last 2 attempts. Richard Madley, I should say, the IPL auctioneer. IPL is the Indian Premier League, Trent, if you weren't aware. He was the IPL auctioneer between 2008 and 2018. He can also be spotted as an expert on Bargain Hunt and Antiques Roadshow. But we got a little insight into one of the world's slightly less covered topics in cricket auctioning, and he had some stories, didn't he, Treno?
Some great stories too. A bit of KP chat, bit of Andrew Flintoff chat. Good areas. Great man.
Good areas, and he likes his cricket as well. So we'll catch up with you in a bit.
Hi, I'm Richard Madley, the original IPL auctioneer.
Richard, so good to have you on the podcast. Quite a niche guest we've got this week, Trent. But Richard followed us on Twitter a couple months back, and we thought it was an opportunity that we couldn't squander. You're also an expert on bargain hunt and antiques roadshow. How does auctioning off and valuing cricket players, these human beings of sporting excellence, compare to the likes of a Dickensian bookshelf, Richard?
Well, my father was an auctioneer. My father-in-law was an auctioneer. So you could say that auctioneering was in the blood. And I started off auctioneering flower pots and step ladders when my father allowed me into the garages of the houses we were selling in suburban Cardiff in the 1970s. And in fact, the first lot I ever sold was a step ladder, and it was bought by a local dealer, £3.50. And he said, I'm going to keep that step ladder, because one day you'll be one of them auctioneers that sells things for millions of pounds. And I can say I got the first lot you ever sold. So that's how that's how I started. And actually, the principles of selling a step ladders for £3.50 or Mahendra Singh Dhoni for 1.5 million, aren't really that different. I'm able to, I can count loudly. I like to think that, I can command an audience. My father said to me, he said, Richard, never forget the 3 Fs when you're an auctioneer. A good auctioneer should be firm, fair, and friendly, but definitely avoid the 4th F if someone's annoying you at the back of the room.
Let's leave that to the imagination. I was going to get straight into it. This is a question I've always been burning to know. Did you ever have any secret biases towards any players, and did you ever bump their price up in the auction?
Yeah, everybody's asked me who my favourite player is, who my favourite team is, so who I'm going to show favouritism to. And when I'm asked who my favourite player is, my favourite Indian player, to my Indian audience, I say Farouk Engineer. Now, that's normally met with a blank stare like I'm getting now. Farouk Engineer he was simply the greatest Indian stumper batsman of the 70s, and I admired him hugely. I had pictures of him with Alan Knott beside my bed as a schoolboy growing up. So I can honestly say that when I first set off on the IPL trail, I had no idea what was going to happen. I mean, I was just phoned up by a friend of mine who worked for IMG and said, Matters, we need a bit of help in putting together the sort of rules and regulations of conducting an auction. And I said, what are you selling? He goes, we're selling cricketers. I said, are you crazy? And he said, yeah, it's an unusual concept, but can you help us out? So that's how I got involved. I jumped in my car from Bristol and drove up to London. And I sat down with the team from IMG who'd been tasked with this. They've been given this task of formulating an auction of the world's top players, including, of course, Glenn McGrath and the late, great Shane Warne. So I went along there really to give some technical advice. And by the time I left, 8 hours later, they had my passport off me and I was on my way to Mumbai.
I wanted to ask, Richard, take us into the auction house. There's naturally going to be a buzz in that auction house when the likes of your McGraths, your Warnes, your Mahendra Singh Dhonis, that it's their turn to be auctioned off. How does the buzz in that auction house compare to the likes of Dimitri Mascarenhas or Umesh Yadav and the sort of the lower rung players in the early seasons of the IPL? Would take us through what that process looks like and the atmosphere while you're auctioning off these players.
Well, I've got to say that since 2008 and on Monday, remember, we celebrated the 15th anniversary of the inaugural IPL auctions. We've come a long way since then. And when I first took that sale on February 20th, 2008 in the ballroom of the Oberoi Hilton in Mumbai, I had no idea what to expect. I knew it was hot. It was really hot. It was so hot that when I got on stage to do a little sound check, I started to leak. Politely, ladies would say, perspire. I was sweating and thought, I've got a big auction ahead of me and I am leaking. So very kindly, they whisked me off down to the ladies' hairdressing salon underneath the stage, where a very nice Indian lady put pancake all over my face. She gave me the bridal makeup. This is what the Indian brides have, so they maintain their posture and posure throughout their wedding. And therefore, I went on stage caked in pancake, and I managed not to leak for the rest of the day. But I had to go out and buy 2 new shirts, matching shirts, so I could quickly change those at half time and with in the last session. So I remembered how hot it was, and I remembered how noisy it was, and I thought, what are all these people doing? You've never seen so many journalists, you've never seen so many fans in your life. And then I realized it wasn't really to do with the auction. It was to do with the celebrities who bought the franchises. These are the superstars, the Bollywood stars of India, who'd acquired franchises in Kolkata and Bangalore and Mumbai. And so it was the Indian press who were coming to cover it because of the celebrity status of the bidders. Much more so than Glenn McGrath or Shane Warne or even Mahendra Singh Dhoni. However, during the course of the next few hours, cricket changed. Cricket changed forever on that day. And the first player out of the hat was Shoaib Akhtar. He sold to KKR, interestingly, a Pakistan player. Haven't had many of those in the auction since then. And Warne then came up. When Warne came up, he had a base price of 450,000. Now, I've been told that off the record that when they were signing up the players for the auction, the first player they called up was Glenn McGrath and said, and the phone call went something like, Glenn, there's a new cricket tournament taking place, mate. Would you be interested? And he goes, where is it? And he goes, India. And there was a silence. How long's it for? And he went, 6 weeks. Oh, 6 weeks in India. Wow, I'm not so sure about that. He said, how about 400 grand guaranteed? I'm in, mate. I'm in. So McGrath was signed up, and therefore they had a player committed to the auction. Next person they phoned up was Shane Warne. Warne, there's a tournament taking place. We wonder if you're interested. Where is it? He goes, India. Oof, not so sure about that. How long is it for? 6 weeks in India. He goes, what? He said, McGrath's going. He goes, is he? How much are you giving him? He goes, 400 grand. He said, give me 450 and I'm in. So they gave him 450 and that was it. So therefore, they could pick up the phone to the other 82 players and say, we got the new tournament, it's called the IPL, it's India, and McGrath and Warne are in. You in? And of course, everybody said yes. So therefore, Australia did have, played a key role in the inaugural IPL auction. And once Warne sold very smartly to the Rajasthan Royals, in fact, they weren't even called the Rajasthan Royals. They were just called Jaipur. Once he'd been signed, I knew then that they'd be in safe hands. And guess what? He won the tournament for them. And then I went on a couple of players later. Out came MS Dhoni, $1,500,000 sold. And that was it. That was it. We'd moved into a new era of cricket altogether.
Richard, I was curious whether you had any interactions with the players themselves after auctioning them off. Is there ever this scenario where I don't know, Flintoff's gone for a little bit less, and he goes, "Hey, Dickie, can I call you Dickie? What are you playing at? I'm gonna have to go and play Big Bash in December to a bunch of KFC bellies to pay off my mortgage." Are there any interactions like that?
Well, we thought about bringing the players into the auction room, for on the day of the sale. But we thought, what would happen if you had, player A on stage and he just goes and makes a fortune, and his best mate, who's player B, comes up there and he makes half, or what's worse, doesn't sell at all. How embarrassing would that be for player number B? So we decided, look, most of the players are actually involved when the auction takes place. They're out there grafting. Allegedly, they're out in the field to play. I've heard that some of them stay up all night to watch the auction. Some of them don't go to bed. Some of them have little TVs in the dressing room, or telephones that they're not allowed, which are on so they can follow the auction. But I don't actually get to see the players until after the event. I might just bump in to a player, and I can remember meeting MS Dhoni when I went to the tournament, and I thought, what a nice, humble man, what a charming, unassuming fellow, the epitome of a gentleman. And then I met Kevin Peterson, completely the opposite. And in fact, he blanked me. KP blanked me, and I was in a hotel lobby. In Port Elizabeth. It was IPL 2, and it was the game. It was Chennai Super Kings against the Royal Challengers Bangalore. So it was Freddie Flintoff against KP. It was absolutely brilliant in many ways, and I'd been asked if I could get the autographs of Kevin Peterson by a young English fan if I ever bumped into him. And I said to the young fan, this was before I left, I said, the chances of me bumping into Kevin Peterson are very remote. But guess what? We were staying in the same hotel. And as it happens, I was actually asked to go on the team bus to the ground to do some press work beforehand. And who was sitting in the lobby but Kevin Peterson? He was on his phone, looking, texting or WhatsApping. Actually, it's all pre-WhatsApp. It's a long time ago, texting. So I went up to him and I said, excuse me, Kevin, sorry to disturb you. I wonder if I could have your autograph. Whereupon, without looking up at me, he just said, why's that? And I said, well, I'm sure you hear it all the time. It's not actually for me. It's for a young fan. And again, he didn't raise his eyebrow. He didn't look up at me. He said, I'm not sure I should sign anything, really. You never know what people do with your signatures. And I said, well, that's a shame, because this young lad, funnily enough, holds you in very high regard. And he said, well, you know what? The bus is coming soon. So no thanks. and I thought he hadn't even looked at me. Into the room came Andrew Wildblood, global head of IMG, the architect behind the IPL, Lalit Modi's right-hand man. And of course, up looks KP, and KP stands up and puts his arm around Wildblood. And Wildy said, I see you're talking to Madders. At which case, that moment then, KP looked at me and thought, Madders, fuck, are you the auctioneer? Oh, mate, oh, how many times can I sign your, please, how do you want it? Best wishes. And you know what? What I really wanted them to do was to sign that piece of paper, and I wanted just to tear it up, chuck it in the air. And then completely opposite, who did I go out with that night for a beer or three? Freddie Flintoff. Well. In the days when he was drinking, you could not. He was so appreciative. I'd made them both millionaires. They both got $1.4 million. Freddie could not thank me enough. What a different guy. So there you go. Maybe Kevin's changed his spots, since then, but I won't forget that one.
Since the zebras, no, he's.
What's having a beer with prime Freddie Flintoff like?
Oof. Well, he's just such a nice guy. He is so relaxed. He is so chilled. I've got to say, he was sort of I don't know. He was just hugely appreciative, and it wasn't sort of, oh look, mate, you've made $1 million. Let me buy you lots of beers. It was, come and have a beer. Let's talk it through. How was it? And he was just Freddie, just a really decent guy. I mean, the sort of guy you'd go down to your local cricket club with, and have a beer after the game, and just very different from some of the other mercurial players. Although generally, KP accepted, I found cricketers on the whole, are pretty open fellows. They're good company. They're very relaxed, and and I've made some good friends over the years.
You're a club cricketer yourself, Richard, a wicketkeeper batsman you mentioned. Is there any element of the auctioneer in you that has or is given a certain proficiency in the slip cord in a village game, being able to rattle off any here one-liner there?
I've never thought of that really. However, as you can guess, I make my living with my voice, and although I might be mic'd up on television, when I sold down in the cattle market in Exeter back in the day, there was no microphone, so you had to shout loudly. Therefore, I can appeal louder than any other cricketer you've ever played with. And if I go up, if I'm standing up and I go for a nick behind, the batsman will want to walk, not because he thinks he might have nicked it, but he does not want to hear my appeal going through his helmet and straight through his ears. So I would say I would appeal loudly. What's my banter? Look, my banter it has to be good, because I'm probably 20 years older than any of the other players who play with me on a Thursday night. I play for a team. I play for the Swingers now.
Richard,
that gets
go.
It gets a mixed response when people say, what are you doing on Thursday night? So I'm with the Swingers in our village. We meet every Thursday night at 6, and we play around till about 9. Then we go drinking, and then I explain that we swing cricket bats badly. And as I say, the average age of the players is in their early 40s. So I'm at least 20 years older than any of them. But I've got a pair of wicket-keeping gloves, and none of them can catch. And therefore, they put me behind the stumps to try to as a stopper and as an appealer. And then, of course, I found there's no LBW in RT20, but I'm very useful in the bar afterwards. I haven't lost that touch.
There's no LBW in most club cricket, Richard. I need to admit.
Well, of course. Now, having stopped playing properly, I only played league cricket for 40 years. But I then qualified as an ECB Level 2 umpire 2 years ago. So now, on a Saturday afternoon, I make myself very useful to my village cricket club, where I'm also president, by acting as the club umpire. Now, the players said to me, look, that when I was getting really, really old, they said, Madders, if you stop playing and become an umpire, we will be able to get points. We will be able to get points for having a qualified umpire. You could earn us points. Therefore, you never earned us a point as a keeper or a batsman. Why don't you qualify as an umpire? So that's what I've done. I've qualified as an umpire, and before we get on the pitch every Saturday, Biddiston Cricket Club have got a point in the bag because of my umpiring.
How does that compare to the millions that you've earned cricketers on the IPL?
Yeah, it's funny actually. Sometimes the biggest disparity is when I do bargain hunts. So with bargain hunt, you've got £300, you've got 1 hour, and you've got to buy 3 lots. And the teams get very, very excited about buying something for £20 and selling it for 22. Yeah, and I've just come back from Bangalore, where where the sale total was 46 million, for the IPL mega auction. But I still show the same amount of enthusiasm for someone buying a copper warming pan for £18 than someone buying MS Dhoni for 1.5 million.
Getting excited about spending £300 in an hour sounds like an evening at the bar after one of our Saturdays. Sorry, Trent, I interrupted you.
So I just want to touch on the note that you're umpire. Now, you're also a cricketer, a very good cricketer, played for Surrey. I've got to stop you there. Because I've been picked up by all my fans. I played in the Surrey Cricketers League. Okay, so I was playing for a team called Cobham, who played in the Surrey Cricketers League. So no, I can't claim to have been a great cricketer, an enthusiastic cricketer, but never at the level of a county player. So fake news on the internet. So here's the question: what's more satisfying, giving someone out OBW when it's right up the guts, a cover drive that you just flush straight through the covers, or hitting the gavel flush on the pad and saying sold?
Oh, wow. I really hoped you were going to give me offer me a little nick, because as a keeper, just a little nick standing up was always the most satisfying disposal to me. But
we can give you that. We can give you that. We can play with that.
Listen, if you get that, that is the most satisfying. Just a little feather, little outside edge, and it's just a slight bit of deviation, and really only the keeper knows. And the keeper goes up, and you can influence the umpire then. Of course, the batsman's never going to walk, is he? Because he's never nicked it. Batsmen never, ever touch the ball, do they? Apart from when it goes to the boundary, they claim. So I'm going to go for an outside edge, closely followed. I do like to be really confident with an LBW when I am so confident that my finger's gone up before the bowler has appealed, because it's hit them on the ankle. They're plumb. It hasn't moved an inch, and they are just nailed. They're pinned there. So that gives me great satisfaction. But otherwise, umpiring is not dissimilar to being an auctioneer. I've said this. In fact, I've spoken at umpires' associations. I've got as an umpire, you've got to be in control of the situation. Like an auctioneer, you've got to be alert. You've got to give fair decisions. All this is very, very similar. So there are great similarities between being a good auctioneer, which I can talk about, and a crap umpire, which my boys say I am when I give one of them out.
Awesome. I think that's probably all we've got time for, Richard. Thanks so much.
I'm delighted, not because I haven't enjoyed it, but because I can see that my phone's got about 3% left.
Perfect time.
So it's absolutely perfect timing. It's been an absolute pleasure joining you, and I guess I'll have a beer with Freddie Flintoff, but no birthday card from KP.
Thanks so much, Richard.
Rightio, let's get serious once again, Paddy. It's time for the draft. This one's is talking about the controversy everyone's talking about on socials from the great cricketer calling the Nighthawk wet, which personally I agree. Then was replied by another English TikToker. Geez, I sound wet. Another English TikToker replying that the Palms have got us rattled, which they already have. We know that already. But now for this draft, we're going to draft the wettest things people can do in cricket. Now I'm going to put a preface on this. There's only us two this draft, and they can be anything involved with cricket. So it can be fans spectating or playing. Okay. Paddy, you'll lead off again, and there'll be 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Each way. We know how to do it.
Yeah. This is a really good draft. I'm really looking forward to sort of building a little roster here. My first one's people are probably gonna shoot me down for this, but it's when a pace bowler, or it doesn't have to be any bowler, marks out their run up and then does a little decoy run in, before they run in and do a little fake action. It's like, mate, I hate that. I hate that so much. I think that's probably the wettest thing in cricket for me. I see everyone does it. Everyone does it. You're not going to bowl a big Mohammed Amir front foot. You're all right, champ. I don't know. That's my first pick.
See, I was going the exact same lines. I'm going people who mark their run out by running back their action from starting at the crease. So I'm so glad to overlap. That's my one pick. People who run out there, mark their run up by running back.
Yeah. I think that's quite a good matchup first off the bat.
That's
good rosters.
Great
this one again, it's on the marking front when you're out in the middle. It's taking more than one guard. when someone who's playing like 2s, 3s cricket takes middle 2 and off, it's like you're not Jonathan Trott. What are you going to do? You're going to be reading Simon, who's 55, bowling Meadows. Like, you're going to be saying, that's sort of slightly on a 4th stump line, but I know that because of the 14 guards I've taken. No,
so what do you expect? What do they expect, mate? If you're going to mark middle leg, you're not going to kick one in the middle? No, like, things don't change. You're 35. You've been kicking them since you're 12. Like, it's not going to change this year, champ.
Yeah, that's my second pick.
Yeah, good pick. That's a great pick. My second one. People who wear the thigh pads on the outside. That's criminal. That is absolutely criminal. I don't want to see the brand that you're wearing underneath your pants.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Do you?
The worst one I have seen is like there's the big stripe ones with different colours and like a black strap. That's probably the yuckiest thing I can see. I think in cricket.
What about those really, really budget, bobbly like polystyrene ones? Oh mate, look it up if you can't. I'll send you a picture. They're horrible.
Please do.
Yeah, Pretty Village. When you're in colours in training in the nets, are you allowing it on the outside? Okay.
Yes, in training, totally acceptable. I do the exact same thing.
I think
but
that's
in a game, if you wear it on the outside, that is just so wet.
I think that's where that second pick becomes undone because it's only situational, mate. That pick only works in certain scenarios. So I'm gonna say. I was thinking about going for people who wear an arm guard, but I can sort of respect
Safety,
it. I can sort of respect it. My third pick is people who actually say walking in. You grow out of that. You grow out of that at like 9, 10. I think that's possibly the wettest thing in cricket.
I've got the best story with this. When we were playing like rep cricket in Australia when I was 12, I was lucky enough to be captain. And we used to lead a chant every single ball for 50 overs. Walking in with the bowler, then 2 claps, and then every single ball we walk in with the bowler. That is probably the wettest thing anyone can ever do in cricket. Right there, and I've done it myself. Led the charge from the front. What a skipper. What a skipper, mate. Hard in the sleeve.
Oh, walking in with the bowler. That's awful. Yeah, that wins, mate. You've somehow given me the win with a personal anecdote.
Yeah, and I wonder why my dad doesn't love me. Right, last pick. This one, I think this should have been my second pick, but I got overruled by the situation. People who wear Test cricket clothing to watch Test cricket. What do you expect's going to happen, mate? Do you reckon you go and play for the team? They've got fucking 13 blokes in their sheds waiting to go in field. Do you reckon you're going to get called up, mate? Do you reckon? Not a chance.
That's so true. Like full kit wankers. Honestly, yeah. Although I think this is where this becomes undone. It's like stag do's where everyone wears the full gear. Spikes, love it.
No, this is exclusively Test like memorabilia clothing.
Yeah.
So it's got the emblem, the brand name that's made the shirt, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Who's buying Test gear?
Especially with the numbers, the names now. If you're buying like what number would you buy though? This is the last question for you before we go. Route 66, surely.
Yeah, I think 66 probably no brainer, but like the sex number 69, pretty epic. Dunk my balls. Have you seen the guy on TikTok, Skipper? He's got 420 on his back. That's pretty beast. Yeah. Right, I reckon we'll wrap it up there. That's our draft. Just our first draft, just the two of us, Treno, actually. But the wettest things people can do in cricket, as inspired by Stuart Broad's role as Nighthawk. I'm glad we didn't actually discuss that too much on this episode of the podcast. I think the less said about it, the better, because I can kind of respect it. It's fun, but like it's like calling yourself a Power Ranger. No. So my picks were people who mark out their run-ups and do a little decoy run-in. People who take more than one guard, and then people who actually say walking in. I would say past the age of sort of 14 as well, maybe.
No, that's too late.
Yeah.
8.
Yeah.
As the person who's done it, it's 8.
And what were your
I
picks?
highly regret it. My picks were people who mark their run-ups by running backwards from the crease. That's very wet. Then second one was people who wear the thigh pads on the outside of their clothing in games. I have to say in the games, not in training. And the last one was people who wear Test cricket clothing to go and watch Test cricket.
Yeah, good variety in your roster. I would just say, as I said before, maybe slightly undone by the sort of T's and C's that you needed on a couple of them.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, good drafts.
Yes.
Who do you think's won it?
I think I always back myself, and I will to the end of the earth because I'm very self-conscious. So I'm going to say myself, and I hope that I get represented probably better this time than last time, because somehow you got outvoted me last time on socials, which is an absolute joke. If I don't get right at this time, it's an absolute outrage. So please get on Instagram when I put this up, vote me. I really need this. You don't know how much I need this.
I don't think.
You don't need that much, Paddy. You've had a lot going on. You've just been published in Wisdom. You interviewed Cookie. I've coached kids for 8 hours and I've covered on a draft. Like, I need this desperately.
You'd be surprised at how much those virtual votes what they do for my ego. So get at the socials. That's been a pretty bumper episode of Outside Edge Podcast. If you've made it to the end, thank you. Get around us. We might just be your favorite way of consuming cricket in an audio manner. I'm still talking. I'll stop now. Thanks very much for listening. It's been Paddy and Trent, Outside Edge Podcast. We'll catch you very soon.
See ya.